This one's gonna be a doozy. I hope you're ready. Well, what a wonderful thickened fog day for you, survivor with dead heart who juked me after my blink. My name is Bricky, and welcome to Dead by Daylight Casefile, featuring the nurse, or better known as the Blinky Girl. The nurse's real name is Sally Smithson, and she's really trying to work as hard as she can to get as many S's in her name, apparently. She moved into town with her husband, Andrew the Lumberjack, with dreams of a happy life with kids and a wholesome family. But Andrew's job is a dangerous one, and one day when the foreman came home instead of him, Sally was told the heartbreaking news. Now she needed a job, and without any major education, the only one she could choose was the Crotus Asylum. She started from the bottom, and after 2 decades, 20 years of working there, she never got promoted. 2 decades of seeing the most horrid, disturbing, and nightmarish things known to man that haunted her every sleeping and waking moments. Finally, after years of being abused mentally and physically by both the patients and the staff, she snapped. She realized what she has to do. The next morning, the staff arrived of 50 dead patients, all of them choked to death by the very hands of good old Sally, currently rocking in a corner. That is the story of the nurse. So long story short, she forgot the asylum patient safe word. XD. So the nurse's special ability is Spencer's Last Breath. She contains the final breath of the deceased asylum warden, Patrick Spencer, and uses it to teleport for some reason. Holding right click, or whatever your associated button is, will allow you to charge up a teleport. The teleport will go farther the longer you hold down the button. You cannot cancel the teleport whatsoever, and when you start charging, you must eventually release it. This will allow you to teleport through almost any object, including but not limited to pallets and windows. After teleporting, the nurse has a small moment in which she can then attack. Whether she does or doesn't will begin her fatigue time, in which she looks down at the ground and slows her movement speed excessively. Fatigue duration increases with the amount of blinks you use, and you can see how many blinks you have by the little orange dots in her fist. That is the power of the Blinky Girl. But how do you play the Blinky Girl? Well, she isn't easy at all, but the nurse is the current strongest killer in the entire game. See, there are a few things that should be mentioned regarding the nurse. First things first, she has the slowest movement speed of any killer in the game at 96.25%. This is actually slower than Survivor's sprint speed. She literally moves slower than Survivor's, which may sound bad, but of course it isn't because of her blinks. There's a lot to say about the nurse and where the power comes from versus how it works in the game and what it means for the DBD meta. The nurse is without a doubt, the hardest killer to play. She requires absolute precision, mechanical prowess, and practice upon practice like no other. When you pick up the nurse, you will immediately get completely bent over by survivors and probably have the worst game of your life. She takes so much practice because the nurse is all muscle memory. It's knowing how long to time your blinks. It's knowing how far your blink will go. It's knowing whether you can hit a survivor after your blink. And most importantly, it's about reads. See, she ignores pallets and windows almost completely. These are non-existent obstacles for her. So the way survivors beat the nurse is one of 3 things: stealth, line of sight breaking, or pure jukes. Most of the time, it's gonna have to be skilled jukes. That's where the best nurse players differ from the bad nurse players or the regular nurse players. Survivors are going to double back, run the opposite way you expect, go through a window, then go back out the window. They're gonna stop moving, they're gonna keep moving, they're gonna do everything that isn't run in a straight line if they're good players. You see, survivors can beat a bad nurse almost every time. Survivors can beat a mediocre nurse almost every time. Survivors can generally beat a good nurse. Survivors will never beat a god nurse. See, it's all predictions, it's all reads, it's all figuring out survivors and their playstyle. Does that David have dead hard? Does that Meg have sprint burst? Has that Meg been doubling back a lot? Like, is it time to blink the other way now? Does that Jake ever drop pallets, or does he just run through them? Does he go over the window? Does he go back over the window? It's so mind gamey. It's all this kind of crap. Does Claudette run towards you when you charge up your blink, so you're gonna have to do a short blink? It's insanely insanely challenging. The nurse is the undisputed hardest killer in the game, but at the same time, the undisputed best killer in the game. Nurse is what you play if you want to win. It's what you play if you want to fuck over a survive with friends group. The nurse is a learn and master, not a pick up and master. And you're probably wondering, Bricky, you're not telling me how to play the nurse, and you're right, because I can't really tell you how to play her. You have to learn how to play her. She's all muscle memory and hard reads. She's a fucking fighting game character without combos. If there's any advice I will give you, is study your ABBs. Always be blinking. Camp if they bum rush, of course, because that's what you should do. But if not, hook someone, and while I try to rescue them, hook some other person, and then go back and hook the other person, and then go back and hook the other person. Always be forcing them to unhook people every time. Keep them occupied. Besides that, you just need to play and play and play and play. And if you do so, you will see why the nurse is so strong. Okay, rant over. Let's talk nurse add-ons. The nurse is actually one of the few killers where almost all add-ons are bad for her, mainly because it screws with your mental memory. If you increase distance, charge speed, blink window, all that stuff, it will cause you to screw up when you no longer have those add-ons anymore. It all messes with your mental memory. Even simple ones like extra blinks are tough because they will increase your fatigue time if you're using 3, 4, or 5 blinks. But if you must run add-ons, I'd go with the extra blinks. So bookmark, cincture, fragile wheeze, and Campbell's, along with distance. Like I said, distance can screw you over more than it can help, but personally, I enjoy distance because it increases your map pressure. You can get places faster. So wooden horse, pine cone, and that little skinny tube. My personal favorite nurse build, however, is dark cincture and the pine cone. Cincture gives you a second blink but lowers your max range. Pine cone increases your max range at the loss of accuracy. Now, I never really give a shit about accuracy. I never feel like it actually hurts me or any kind of way, but with a slight range reducer and a moderate range increaser, you will have just a little more range, and it feels just right. That's my personal favorite little blink add-on combo. Besides that, running absolutely nothing on the nurse or just the fragile wheeze is good too. For the nurse's perks, we have I see you bitch, I hear you bitch, and are you scared yet bitch. Nurse's calling, very, very good. Seeing the aura of healing survivors is great, pairs well with modern abuse since the perk has a 28-meter range and the standard terror radius is 32, so that perk, excellent. Strider, not so good. Not that the idea is bad, but things like No Mither and Iron Will auto-counter it, and there are just so many better perks to choose from. Thanatophobia is a guilty pleasure. At the end of the day, it's not a great perk. It's a rather bad one, because the slower speeds really don't stack up that much. However, I like it a lot for the mind games. Survivors despise seeing that damn icon in the corner, and will do everything they can to get rid of it. It will promote a heavy amount of altruism, and you can capitalize on that a ton. For nurse builds, you never need to run anything pallet related. Barbecue and chili is a godsend on the nurse. Run it every time you can. Of course, your standard best killer perks are good, like Hex Ruin and Overcharge especially. Those are great. Franklin's Demise is also wonderful if you want to get rid of some items or cause them some problems. Running Modern Abuse along with Nurse's Calling is an excellent choice so long as they're paired. And one guilty pleasure of mine as well is Devour Hope. I mentioned in the Hag video, I love Devour Hope. It's one of my favorite perks ever, even though it's a hex. But the nurse is a great camper, of course, but she's also a really good cross-map person. Remember, always be blinking, hook, run, hook, run, hook, run, giving them something to do. That's the best kind of way, because you keep on leaving, you keep on getting stacks, and then you start one-shotting them, and they start shitting their pants. It's a lot of fun. For the nurse meme build, I always take the Ascension Nurse. Modern Abuse, Shadowborn, Strider, and Nurse's Calling. You can see and hear everything. I have ascended. And of course, let's not forget the Nurse's Mori. Survivors like it rough. So let me drop some Bricky knowledge on you, okay? If there's any part of the video that I want you to leave with, it's this right here. The nurse is a product of everything wrong with Dead by Daylight and its balance issues. Because pallet looping and the simple nature of pallets are such a reliance by survivors, removing them makes them only be able to rely on stealth. However, stealth has absolutely no reason to be used considering how many anti-stealth perks are being added to the game. Nurses calling, barbecue and chili, fuck man, even things like blood warden and the literal existence of the doctor are making stealth obsolete. So because the nurse ignores the #1 best counter survivors have against killers, and because stealth is also becoming worse and worse, they can only do one thing: jukes. And if you're a good nurse, you can counter jukes. Now, Dead Hard has made it a little bit harder because that works really well against the nurse, but overall, that's what makes a good nurse. Can you read, predict, and counter jukes? And honestly, once you get the mechanics down, it's not that hard. You ignore pallets, the best tool for survivors. Stealth is becoming far less powerful, therefore making it even harder to deal with the nurse, and good nurses can beat you in the juke game. Now, normally high learning curve killers should be strong. That's fine. The harder they are, the better payoff if you learn them. But the nurse is that too far. Having a killer better than the rest because of how hard they are is fine, but because the meta is the way that it is, the nurse is going unchecked and is completely, substantially, unequivocally broken. This may be a nurse problem to a point. What it really is a Dead by Daylight problem. The killers that are the best in the game right now rely on one thing: how are they in the chase? Billy, Huntress, Nurse. The best killers. If stealth was better, if pallets weren't such a reliance, killers like the Doctor, Myers, so on would be much, much better. But they are not, because of the way the meta is. And because the way the meta is how it is, the nurse is absolutely too strong. Something needs to happen. I don't know what, but something needs to happen. Or you can just run, a ton of mist and pop a Larry's Memorial Institute thing for the nurse and then watch her cry, because that does happen a lot. Anyway, that is the case file on the nurse, Sally, or the Blinky Girl. As I mentioned before, play the game how you want to play it. No made up honor code, no specific fake rules that you have to be following. Play the game how you want, and most importantly, have fun. My name has been Bricky, and always remember that safe word. Bye-bye.